Hi, it's Dr. Ranj here again, and really grateful to be joined by Nin for that third um, get together discussing autoimmune disease. So thanks for joining me again, Nin.
That's all right.
Yeah,
We've
how
had
have you been?
it's been all right. It's been busy. It's that time of year where we're just trying to get the kids ready for the next academic year, and I'm doing a lot of transition work at school as well. So yeah, it's been really busy, and I feel like I haven't had time to worry about my health too much. It's almost just had to take a side step. But yeah, it's I've been all right.
That's good. Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, so I mean, like we've obviously done two episodes before, and they've been really, really fascinating. It's been a
Yeah.
nice sort of journey that we've kind of been through talking about autoimmune disease and obviously your journey with MS, looking at the different aspects of autoimmune disease. So we've looked at, how nutrition plays a part and physical activity and exercise and how important things like sleep are. So today I wanted to talk about another really important aspect, which was things like mental well-being and our support network and how that can help support our kind of mental and emotional
Hmm.
sort of needs.
Yeah.
Um, so I'd like to kind of kick off, if you don't mind, is talking a little bit about just giving us your sort of thoughts on when you kind of were first diagnosed. Obviously, we know the presentation was obviously with the physical symptoms,
Hmm.
um, but how did it sort of mentally and emotionally sort of affect you, and were you aware as well of kind of the impact it was having on your kind of mental wellness?
Yeah, I don't think I was aware. I think the physical aspect of when I was diagnosed March last year,
Hmm.
um, kind of overpowered and kind of masked everything else.
Hmm.
I feel because I was so focused on the physical aspect of the illness at that time, my well-being and my mental health was kind of pushed to the side, or it wasn't even considered. And actually, it wasn't until gosh, and it was quite a while. My MS nurse used to always check in with me, and she'd be like, Nin, do you feel like you need to speak to somebody? And I'd be like, no, I'm fine. I've got a really supportive husband. I've got people around me. I'm blogging. I'm absolutely fine. I'm dealing with it how I feel best. But every time she spoke to me, I'd end up in tears. And she'd be like, Nin, I really feel like you could really benefit from
Hmm.
speaking to somebody.
Yeah.
But it was only early this year.
Okay.
So I was almost a year into diagnosis of just kind of feeling like I was drowning and just dealing with things and going with emotions. And then earlier on this year, I hit crisis point, I hit breaking point, and I couldn't cope. I wasn't able to get out of bed some days. I was emotionally driven through everything, negatively emotionally driven through everything I was doing. And I think that was manifested in different parts of my life. So she put me in touch with a therapist,
Okay.
and
That's really
I
good.
was, it was just through the NHS, and they were absolutely wonderful. It was talking therapies,
Yeah.
and they put me in contact with a therapist, and I was having weekly check-ins with her, and it was almost like a score system. So I had to answer certain questions,
Hmm.
and I scored quite highly on them all, and I didn't realise until my therapist totaled it all up at the end how high I was scoring. But actually, towards the end of my sessions, and we had to go over a little bit because she felt like I wasn't ready to stop them. My
Sure.
scores were really low,
Okay.
and so actually, just by having somebody to speak to about my well-being
Hmm.
was yeah, it was just so worthwhile. And it was really hard because actually you speak to your family, but I'm very limited on what I tell my family
Okay.
because I don't want to worry them. And like my mum rings me, she's like, right, darling, how are you feeling? Tell me the truth. And she laughs about it because
Yeah.
it's that truth element that I don't always share with my circle. And it is just because you just don't want to worry them more
Yeah.
than anything. But therapy definitely was a big part of my life this year, but that was only a year after diagnosis because I didn't realise it
Yeah.
my mental health was being affected and I almost neglected it because I was dealing with everything else. And it took a crisis moment, a crisis point, for me to crash and think, actually, you know what, I need help here.
Yeah, and often that happens, doesn't it? You think you're dealing with things in, like you said, in different ways of, you think you're talking about it, you think, kind of blogging and openly talking about it is dealing with it. But sometimes it's almost like putting up a barrier where you, and that's kind of your defense mechanism. Is that how it felt?
Yeah, I think it was more, if I don't think about it, it doesn't exist.
Mm-hmm.
Or if I don't think about it, it's not, I'm not going to let it affect my life. Having the girls as well, I was very conscious on how they saw me as their mum. And I didn't want to be the mum that was always in bed, or the one that was always crying, or that sort of, I wanted to be the strong woman, the strong mum that they needed me to be as well. So almost you do put your well-being to the back because you've got other priorities that are at the forefront. But actually something that I wanted to discuss with you today was actually, did I leave it too late? How important is it for someone to really focus on their well-being? Because we talk about self-care, but prioritizing self-care is really hard because it's all those things in the background of switching off and relinquishing control onto other people and being honest. That are the hardest points.
Absolutely. I mean, obviously, the simple answer is yes, it's very important. But it's, as you know, it's such a complex, complex thing. Some of the things that you've spoken about there in terms of, you tend to focus on sort of the physical aspects and you neglect the sort of the emotional aspects and things like that. You just try and get on with fulfilling all your other roles in life that you just either don't have time or to do those things, and that's why it can be difficult to do, but it's so important. I always say that it's important to look at well-being as kind of a holistic process. Well-being is not just the physical well-being, it's your mental, your emotional well-being, your social well-being, and all of those things, they interact together. You can't have one without the other. An example is like if you're feeling sort of stressed and low and down, it impacts all the other areas. But if you're not, but you're not dealing with those things, so you think you're getting on and carrying on, but you're still feeling all of those emotions, but you're still trying to physically get on. But then if you then kind of really look at how you're feeling, you probably feel physically exhausted. You don't have the energy to do things. Emotionally, you're probably drained. You start to break off your social ties with people. You don't want to interact with people, and if you do, you're probably feeling irritable and angry, and you get into arguments. So it just shows how you can't have one bit without having all the other things. So that's why looking at everything together is so important.
So are there any self-care practices or techniques you would definitely recommend somebody to undertake either on a daily or a weekly basis? Because I know we all talk about self-care and looking after our well-being, but what does that actually mean? Because I know we've got our own interpretation of it, but what does that actually mean? Does it mean having a long soak in the bath? Does it mean switching your phone off for a bit? What does self-care and looking after your emotional well-being really mean?
And it could be all of those things, but I think it's important to take it back to the basics and bring it back to yourself first. And this is where it's really important to, and I'll say it's a kind of a very loose term, but it's just kind of going easy on yourself. What that means is just taking time, kind of reflective time, and to be mindful of your condition, acknowledging your condition, and kind of becoming present with it. So where are you at this present time with your condition?
Right.
just being able to know, what am I feeling at the moment? What physical symptoms am I feeling? How am I emotionally at the moment? What are my limitations? What can and can't I do at the moment? And just becoming aware of that, because once you can become aware of that, and kind of you can, allow yourself to be that person at this moment in time, then you can start to decide, if I can't do this at the moment, but I could still go out for a gentle walk. So it's making it kind of personalized to you. So all of those things might be suitable, but it's allowing yourself the time and being kind of self-aware and kind of reflective of what I can and can't do at the moment, and just being at peace with giving yourself time, because you can't do everything all at once, and you can't expect, to, even if you do start something new, that it's going to go perfectly, or there's not going to be challenges, or you might need to readjust and think, okay, I tried that but it wasn't working and I need to do this. So it could be, and like we said, it could be like having a soak, giving yourself some time. Often people find that quite difficult. Just being able to put yourself first, and you probably felt that yourself,
It's that, it's that guilt-free time, isn't it? And you said that being aware of what you need is one thing, giving yourself permission to actually do that, absolutely, I think, is another. And I think the work, they sometimes can clash and work against each other, because actually I might know that my body's telling me through very different signs that it needs a rest, but I might not allow myself for that rest because there's X, Y, and Z to do in the house or with the girls. And so it is that sort of allowing yourself to have that time out, isn't it? And to give yourself permission to rest, because I know culturally as well, sometimes resting can be seen as, you're being lazy, or you're not putting enough effort, or you need to do this, that, and the other. And I think the stigmas around that as well need to be broken down in society, because actually sometimes rest is so valuable, and it is so needed. And like you said, it's not just your emotional well-being, it supports your physical well-being or your social well-being. And sometimes I know when I'm at breaking point when it comes to social interaction, because I'll get loads of texts on my phone and I just won't answer them for hours or a few days, and then I'm clustering and kind of messaging in kind of a cluster, because actually I know that socially my capacity's full almost, and that's because I haven't looked after my well-being earlier on in the week or earlier on in the day. And so it just almost, it's like that bottle of pop, isn't it? You keep building, and eventually you're full and you just kind of overspill or explode. And I think that's something I'm working on, because I do get to those crisis points. And this is why I listen to you, because you give me that advice.
No, it's good. I mean, it's really important to, and it is that, giving yourself permission, because you have to. And you will always have those guilty feelings of, I'm not spending time with the kids, or there's so much to do around the house and things like that. But you flip it the other way and look at it from, if I'm not feeling well, if I haven't given myself the time to feel well, I'm not giving my best to my children or to my family, or to my partner, or whatever. So that's kind of one way to look at it as well. So when you're feeling at your best, you can give them the best of yourself, can't you?
Yeah, it's that guilt, isn't it? It's overcoming. I know quite a lot of parents deal with parent guilt, don't they, in terms of whether it's because of work or X, Y, and Z. And actually we all have to manage parent guilt, I feel like. But then adding an extra layer of an invisible illness or other social kind of pressures, I think it just adds to that guilt, and it just manifests, doesn't it? And I feel like it's just, as a society, we just need to give ourselves permission, allowing ourselves to be, and almost leaning on other people as well, which is something I'm not always good at doing. But
Sure.
you feel like you can just manage it yourself, don't you? And And it's creating that network around you for support when you need to lean on them.
Absolutely. And that's really important as well, because that if you've got that support network, then you can feel less guilty about having that time. So, if you plan with your partner, or, husband and wife, and then, I know you've got the kids now for the next sort of hour or two, so that's going to give me some time to
Yeah.
do things I need to do, or recharge or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's, being able to have those supportive people there, those people that you can depend on and kind of openly talk to, and those people that you trust that can be there for you, and being able to help you to kind of develop your timetable,
Yeah.
for example, for your day, to say, actually, I've got a bit of time here to myself so that I can. But I know that I'm not neglecting the family, because they're doing something else, which is keeping them busy.
Yeah, that's definitely something we lean on. Family, we lean on my mother-in-law just because she's closer than my family. When we've got appointments, because rather than dragging the girls around, or if I know we've got X, Y, and Z to do, they're going to have a lovely day with her, so they're almost preoccupied, so that then my husband and I can focus on the bloods or whatever it is that we need to go for, because actually half of the guilt is them being in the house and me not being able to give them my 100%.
Yeah.
And so actually leaning on other people around us, it does have, it's hard to do, it's hard to ask for help,
of course.
It's hard to almost admit that you need that support. It's not that, I know they're coming from a place of love and they understand, but from my point of view, or for anyone with an invisible illness, it's that element of feeling, or people thinking that you're not coping, and that's why you're leaning on them. And I think that's, again, another thing that we need to just break down, that actually asking for help doesn't mean you're not coping. It just means that you just need a little bit of extra support for that moment. And it's almost like there are isolated moments out there, the little pockets of moments in your week or in the day where you might just need some extra time just to recharge. But flipping it from the other side, so obviously I am the one with the invisible illness, so I'm the one that have to almost seek support from other people. But what advice would you give if somebody's watching this and they know somebody who's dealing with an autoimmune disease?
Yeah.
What advice would you give them in order to support that person? Because sometimes people, my social circle, don't always know what to say or what to do to support me.
Yeah.
But then it also makes it hard for me to always go out there and ask for help.
Of course. Yeah.
So I'd like you to put yourself in that outer circle, please.
No, absolutely. I think it's a really good question, and for someone kind of looking in from the outside, you always, it almost feels like kind of tiptoeing sometimes if you don't know what to say. Sometimes you don't want to say the wrong thing, or it's so complex, isn't it? Because you could be doing something out of love and support, but you don't want it to be perceived the wrong way. So I think a lot of it is within your social network, and the people that kind of really sort of care about you and are coming from a place of love and support. Things happen quite naturally, don't they? There's a lot of natural adaptation that happens, and I think you mentioned kind of right at the beginning, when kind of you first diagnosed, your husband and family were like, okay, yeah, right, what's the best autoimmune diet and things like that. So it's just very natural, isn't it, for things to happen, and that's really important. So I think it's important for if you've got a good trusting relationship with people, so for you, in terms of not feeling guilty for reaching out to people, but then also for you as the person that's supporting the person with the illness, is, again, if you're coming from a place of love and support, just being open and honest, and if you say the wrong things, it's not going to matter.
No.
If somebody said something to you that you think, actually, maybe I shouldn't have said that, you're not going to take it the wrong way, or even if you did, you're not going to hold it against them or anything like that. But because you both know you're coming from a place of love and support, so you're so that's why it's completely fine to, and that's the important thing, just being open and honest and talking openly. And so for someone who's trying to support you, it's often just little things, isn't it? It's like checking in, how are you doing, how can I help? But sometimes as a person who's supporting you from the outside and can see things externally, it's really important that you can help that person who's going through the illness, who might see things from one perspective, is how can you keep in check, and again, if there is this good trusting relationship, you can actually tell that person, you're really being too hard on yourself at the moment, or I think you're doing too much, you need to slow down, or actually, get your backside, you're not doing enough.
Yeah, it works both ways, doesn't it? Because you need someone to maybe say, I think you need to just slow down a little bit, but you also need that motivator. So usually my husband's the motivator for me. He's the one that is like, come on now, you can do this, get on with it, this, that, and the other, because sometimes you need that push, because you can get a little bit too complacent and stuck in a rut almost, and it is that rut, isn't it, that you're almost not aware yourself, because you're living it every day, that actually the outside eye can potentially see behavior changes. I know it's almost from the outside as well, it's not being offended or upset if the person with the illness has to cancel on plans or doesn't feel like talking right now, because I know sometimes I will make plans, but then last minute my body will not physically or mentally, I can't physically put myself in that position, and I've had to cancel. Thankfully, my friends, etc., are like, oh, it's fine, we'll just rearrange. And it's that understanding as well from the other side, isn't it, as to, because it can look really rude, and I talk a lot about, when I'm blogging, that I'm not being rude, I'm just dealing with this and this, so please don't be offended. And I think that's something else, isn't it? It's just that empathy and that kind of awareness as well from the outside.
Absolutely. And then sorry.
Oh, go on.
No, so
no,
it's like you say, the empathy, the kind of the way people will naturally sort of adapt to the condition. So it's not so it almost doesn't feel like it's you are your condition. It's it just becomes part of life, and if things have to change, they just change.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm speaking from a place where I do have a supportive network around me, but having an invisible illness can be really, really isolated, and there are so many people that I speak to that either have the network but they're not very supportive, or don't have anyone. So are there any, I know which routes I've taken to build a community, but are there any ways in which you feel as a professional people could build that supportive network around them to help them through?
I mean, there's a lot of ways, and obviously I think it's really important first to just take a moment to look at who have you got around you, because you're probably, once you start to look at your family, friends, neighbours and people like that, you probably think, actually, I do have a good relationship with that person, and they're actually they've been through something similar, or or they, that kind of thing, and you think, actually, I might be able to speak to them. So just looking at who you do have around you, you'll probably find that there's more support there than you realise. And secondly, it's really important to realise that actually it's okay to seek help, and it's okay to speak to people if people don't kind of reciprocate it. That's okay. There will be other people that you can speak to. So it's just being able to kind and come to that realization that it's okay to speak to people, and just start to have conversations with people, and you'll find the ones that will start to kind of reciprocate that, and find and kind of be supportive, and kind of form part of your network. Outside of that, there's obviously, for particular conditions like MS and things like that, there's always support groups and that you can leave. And I think those are really helpful, because those are people that are living and experiencing the same things that you're going through. So those are kind of really valuable, because you've got that really kind of intimate connection that you can feel with people. So those, and they, I think you can either find those groups like online or in person. So looking for groups like that, but they don't all they don't have to be specifically related to the condition either. They can just be support groups, local groups, church groups, things like that, clubs. Because the really important thing is it's about building kind of connections, building relationships with people. So you never know who you're going to meet. You could join a local like golf club or something, but you could meet some really nice people who become part of your inner circle, that you just didn't know, and you never know how kind of these relationships are going to develop. So they don't have to know anything about your condition or it, but they just become really close and become a part of your network. And I was going to say was it's that having those connections, it's having that network of support around you, and that closeness to other people that one makes you feel supported, like you're not alone, that you can reach out to someone when you need some help, or just generally they're there for you to make you laugh, and to spend some time with, and have a good time, and take your mind off things. And it's all, and part of it is it's the social connection that helps to raise those happy hormones in your body that actually make you feel good. So that's what's really important. So so joining clubs, groups, even volunteering for things would be helpful. I mean, what particular things have you done that you found helpful?
I've well, when I first got diagnosed, the first thing I went on to the MS Society, because I was seeking something. I didn't know what it was, but I just knew that I had to speak to other people who could understand. People try and understand, but I feel like people truly won't understand, or don't understand until they're living it themselves. So the first thing I did was I went onto the MS Society, and I just went on their forums, and I was just replying to some forums and some questions, and just generating conversation with other people. And as that conversation was generating, I was like, oh my goodness, these people, actually, I can relate to what these people are talking about. And I thought, right, this is something for me. So then I started blogging. And through my blogs, I've actually created my own little MS social sort of network. And it's not just about the blogs. We send messages separately through social media, but we do message each other. We check in. If they see something that I've gone for blood or a scan or something like that, they'll always check in to see how you're doing, and vice versa. And they're strangers, yet I feel so close to them, because we are all going through something really, really similar. And even though our journeys are very different, I can relate to it 100%. And I think that they've been really comforting. But also the flip side of it, like you're saying about clubs, it's actually quite nice when I meet people that don't know that I've got MS, because they treat me differently. But then I behave differently. And it's almost like they don't know that I'm living with this invisible illness, so they almost just kind of treat me normal. And it sounds really strange, but they do. And like at work, we've got obviously new members that have joined the team, and they're not aware, and I'm not going to disclose to them unless I feel like I really, really need to. So it's actually quite nice just having normal chit chat, and it not always coming back to MS.
Absolutely.
And that's quite healthy. I think that's really good for my emotional wellness. And sometimes I'll say to to my husband, I'm like, right, no MS talk today. We're not, and he's like, okay, that's fine, you know, because some days you've had enough and you don't want to talk about it anymore. And I just want to just have a free MS day.
You aren't your condition, you are you.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's getting to that stage, you know, for yourself and with the people around you, where it's, you know, you first and kind of nothing else. You know, that
Yeah.
it's a completely separate thing that doesn't really have to come into the conversation.
No, and I think as time's going on and I feel like I'm managing parts of my life or learning how to best manage parts of my life, or not having to have those conversations all the time because this has become my life now. So it's almost, I can't remember what it was like before, and it was only a year and a half ago, but I almost can't remember what life was like before MS because we've had to make so many drastic changes. It feels like we've lived like this forever. It feels like my diet's always been like this. So actually, because things are so embedded now within everyday life, those conversations are not always at the forefront. You know, when I go to somewhere, they're not like, oh, are you gluten free, or are you this, or can you do this, can you do that? They just know.
Yeah, that's it.
So those conversations that are almost constant reminders, those conversations don't happen all the time anymore, which then is actually quite refreshing because I can go somewhere and it's just normal. It's just, I'm there, I'm socializing, I'm having a nice time, and my illness isn't hindering on, or I feel like I'm not being awkward, because that was the thing at the start. I felt like I was being a nuisance. I felt like I was disrupting the normal balance of life almost, because those conversations had to take place. But now they've just, it's just become everyday life, and that does support your emotional wellness, I think, when you're not being constantly reminded about it as well.
That's really bad. Like we mentioned earlier, it's a natural adaptation, isn't it?
Yeah.
Your support network, your family, your loved ones will kind of, you know, naturally adapt and change until it becomes your new normal. And then you don't have, you know, then you're not thinking about it constantly. They're not thinking about it constantly. You know, there isn't, that awkwardness disappears, doesn't it? You know, it just, this is life now, and it's normal.
Yeah, it is normal until you get that letter through for an MRI scan or bloods or something, and then you are remembered. But that's just life now, isn't it? But something else to kind of support my emotional wellness, sorry, is I don't, although no, I've said it, but I don't tell them when I've got important kind of appointments.
Okay.
Because the lovely text messages that I receive leading up to something actually can be quite overwhelming, and I'm very much like, I don't want to think about it, I just want to block it out. And when I approach for my MRI scan, or when I approach a certain neurologist appointment, I just deal with it then in the moment. And as much as everyone has really lovely intentions wishing me well, those well wishes before just don't go down really well. But it's just a coping mechanism, isn't it?
Absolutely. And everyone's different. So, like, you know, you, like you say, you prefer not to let everybody know you've got something. With some people, you know, do like that kind of reassurance that people are giving them some support and for, you know, something that could be, you know, a bit causing a bit of anxiety and nervousness for them.
Yeah, I think so. I think, and that's the thing we've said from the office. Just, you know, navigating yourself through this as best as you feel, whether it's your social connections or your emotional well-being. And as much as we don't often see it ourselves, it's really important to identify what we need and what we don't need. And throughout my diagnosis as well, I've realised the people in my life that I don't need as well, because they haven't been good for my well-being, they haven't been good for my mental health. So I've had to almost, you know, create that distance from them, because actually it was becoming quite an unsettling sort of relationship. And I think that's important as well. And I think that's okay. It's giving yourself permission to have the confidence and not feel guilty for walking away from some of those, you know, kind of toxic relationships if they're not good for your mental health. And I think that's a big deal. It's a really big deal.
Absolutely.
But that link between emotional wellness and social connection then, what is the link and how important are the two in terms of like mirroring and kind of navigating together?
Obviously they are kind of interconnected. You know, you're to feel that emotional support, you need those connections.
Yeah.
And it's having those connections, the people around you, or the groups and things that you can, and it's all of those things, you know, the people that you can lean on for support, knowing that you're not alone in these things, because obviously, you know, that feeling of loneliness, that feeling, that fear and that worry that comes,
Yeah.
you know, that, you know, thinking you've got to deal with things on your own. You know, there's so many different aspects to it, which, you know, probably kind of have been through or felt. That's what's going to kind of affect your emotional well-being, isn't
Yeah.
it? So when you do have those people around you, when you can be, have that confidence that, you know, I've got these people here when I need them, even when I don't need them, they're supporting me. And it's just that kind of background confidence, knowing that, you know, I'm not alone in this situation.
Yeah.
You know, people are willing to support me, and I know who I can turn to when I've got an appointment that I need to get to, or such and such. And but it's not even just about kind of the medical side of things. It's like we've talked about kind of throughout, is how people have kind of adapted to the situation and are now kind of, you know, sort of living life with you in kind of everyday normal circumstances. So even little things like, you know, if you say you used to you know, go out for bike rides and things, but, you know, just say you can't do that anymore, but actually now we've adapted to going out for walks or picnic at the park. And it's just that, like we mentioned earlier, it's that feeling of connectedness, you know, connecting with people, being you know, having close relationships with people. It's how it affects your body through your hormones, like we mentioned. You know, because there's different hormones for you know, that feeling of connection and love, and lifting your mood and things like that. And that all comes from that social connection. That's what's going to help your emotional well-being.
So before we close today, I'm going to just throw one more thing at you.
Yeah, sure.
So you're my health and well-being coach. I'm coming to you. You've realized that I am very isolated and I'm really struggling with my emotional wellness. What are the what are the give me 3 things that you feel I need to work on?
Okay, cool. 3 things. First of all is working on yourself.
Okay.
Like we mentioned right at the beginning, is kind of developing that awareness and mindfulness about you and where you are, and kind of acknowledging your condition, your limitations and things like that, and being able to you know, just being okay with that. Secondly is then being able to reach out to people, and it's again having that sort of confidence in your support network. Even if you are feeling a bit unsure, it's okay to reach out to people. If you don't get the kind of response that you felt you may have got, or that you needed, you know, there might be other people that you can reach out to for support. But it's completely fine to reach out for support, and just being okay with that, and knowing that people that do care about you and do love you will want to support you. So that's really important. And the last thing is, you know, like we talked about, it's not just kind of your close network, your family and friends that you can get a lot of support from. It's those other aspects as well. Is you don't know who you're going to meet
Yeah.
just by reaching out in different forums. And like we said, it doesn't even have to be anything related to your condition. Just joining a group of volunteering somewhere. You might meet your closest friend for the future in something completely random. So just again, it's having that confidence to put yourself out there, but it doesn't have to be related to your condition at all. You could just be looking to make a new connection, but it's those connections that are really important.
Thanks. I'll take all of that on board.
Put me on the spot a bit, Anna.
I know, yes.
But I think those things are really important,
Yeah. And I think it's really important for somebody who, a lot of people won't know how to build their emotional wellness or how to build that social connection. So the fact that they're able to lean on you for that advice and that support and that guidance, I think it's really important, because sometimes we just need someone initially to hold our hand through things and be like, right, try this, try that, and then off you go, sort of thing. And it's that
as well is and just being there to say that if you try it and it doesn't work, that's okay. There's other ways. You can try something different, or just we can slightly adapt things and do something slightly. So it's okay. It's a journey, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it is definitely a journey that sometimes feels never ending. But it's a journey. A few little bumps along the way, but they're a bit more manageable. I think the more you lean on people and become a bit more self-aware, I think things become a bit more manageable every day.
No, thank you so much.
Thanks.
This has been really helpful, and I really appreciate your time over these 3 episodes.
Yeah,
I think people watching will find your journey so inspirational.
I hope so.
They'll get so much to take away, and things to try for themselves. And I think they'll gain so much from your positive attitude to an approach to the condition. So really want to say thank you.
Oh no, thank you for having me, and that's the whole purpose, isn't it? It's just to somebody may be able to pick just one thing out of what we've discussed, and it may help them, and that's what it's all about. It's just supporting other people and sharing and talking, so that people feel like, and they know they're not alone, because it is invisible and it is so isolating. It's that comfort from watching things and hearing things and just getting a few tips and advice. I think it's all really relevant. So thank you for having me, because I've really enjoyed it, and I think it's been really valuable as well for me. And I'll definitely take on board everything that you said over the last 3 series. I'm working really hard on everything that you said.
I've learned so much from you as well, in terms of understanding people and what they're going through, and it really it helps kind of my awareness as well of what people are going through. So
just
really
learning.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.